All my life, I've been obsessed with film.
Rockin' the boat, and the devil will drag you under by the sharp lapel of your checkered coat. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down. You're rocking the boat.
Films are the one thing that helped me understand the world.
I sailed away on that little boat to heaven. And
I love film so much that I decided to go to film school and move to Los Angeles. When I thought of LA, I imagined a great city. All these films had told me it was, but these films also showed a dark side of LA, and a place I'd never thought I'd enter. Every film had showed it as a dirty place, rampant with crime, drug use, gangs, and hundreds of homeless people. I once heard it called the most dangerous neighborhood in LA. I was also told that the homeless people in the city were crazy, that if you even looked at them the wrong way, they would attack you, or worse. So when I moved to my apartment in downtown Los Angeles, only a few blocks away from this place, I was terrified. But the longer I lived there, the more curious I became. Are these stories really true? Are the people here really that bad? Films have represented black people in a horrible light, but those things are never true. What is their truth? These questions ran through my mind every day until eventually I had to confront my prejudice and go find the truth. I had to go to Skid Row. As I skated through the streets of Skid Row, I thought my worst fears had been realized. I wanted to leave, but I'd already come all the way down here. In order to get a better understanding of the community of Skid Row, I reached out to one of the organizations that work within it. One of the first to respond was the Los Angeles Poverty Department, an arts organization and museum in Skid Row. I spoke to its founding member, John Malpid, an artist himself, and a person who's been a supporter of Skid Row for over 30 years. Nice to be here with you, John. Thank you for setting up this interview and stuff like that and allowing me to interview you guys. What are some of the stigmas associated with the Skid Row and the community there that you...
Well, it's the notion is that, it's a transient community. Mm-hmm. There's like, if you see people in tents on the street, that's like it takes the dynamism out of the situation. Mm-hmm. And there's been sort of an idea that, Skid Row is so, scary that you can't have women and children there. And there have been all these efforts to move people off of Skid Row rather than providing a place.
At this point, I was beginning to get really worried. It seemed like all the things these films had showed me were true. Is there anything worth saving in Skid Row? Is there anything good happening there?
Well, there's so many good things. The reality is that Skid Row is a resource for all of Southern California.
Yeah.
And it's not recognized as such, but it is. And, there's a huge, for example, there's been a huge recovery community. You hear about drugs in Skid Row, but there's been a huge recovery community and a really sophisticated recovery sensibility, because so many people have gotten clean and sober in Skid Row and stayed in the neighborhood, and someone sees them and says, "Oh man, you're doing great. I think I'm going to get with the program or something." Mm-hmm. I know a million people who were living in a tent on the street, who then ended up in an apartment, who then ended up working in the neighborhood, who then ended up, being involved in some civically good activities in Skid Row and elsewhere.
After speaking with the Los Angeles Poverty Department, I began to escape the void these films had put me in. Maybe these films weren't telling the whole truth, and just exaggerating the narrative in order to make the story more interesting. These films had only showed the bad side of Skid Row, not the good side and recovery community like John had mentioned. If there is good in Skid Row, I had to see one of these places for myself. So I volunteered at one of the most popular homeless shelters within Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Mission. It was much different than the prison-like complexes that these movies had shown them to be. It was almost like I was in a completely different place. After volunteering for a while, I was able to speak to one of the women who oversees the Ann Douglas Center and speak to her about what she's seen in the community of Skid Row.
I'm Dr. Roxanne Jordan, and I work as the Senior Vice President of Program and Clinical Development at the Los Angeles Mission and the Ann Douglas Center for Women in the Skid Row area in Los Angeles, California. One of the things about, I think, particularly Ann Douglas Center, as I oversee the women's program, I've seen miracles take place. There are women who've come into the program and they've come out of the court system. Their children have been taken from them, put in the system, and oftentimes they'll come in and the families that the children are being housed with don't want to have anything to do with the men or the women. But one of the things I've seen is they've been steady in their program, in their faith, and in their recovery, back to work, and all of those things. I've had women who have actually not only have had the privilege to get their children back custody-wise, but I've even seen women go and live with the foster parents. So it's like the foster, that she becomes a part of that household. So really miraculous things have happened here. The people who come to our program, because they experience the dignity that we offer, that exudes. And you wouldn't think of them any different if you saw them on the street once they leave the program. So it's really about that human connection for me and seeing people's lives actually transform. And I just want to invite people to come to Skid Row, to come to the Los Angeles Mission, to be a part of what we're doing. We always say our mission is your mission, and you have to come and see. Many times people will look around and see what's going on, but when they come into our building, it's like they're transported somewhere else. So.
After speaking with the Los Angeles Poverty Department and the LA Mission, I began to see the wool pulled from over my eyes. The representations on film and movies aren't always the truth. That much is obvious. But what these films do is make us think these places are that dangerous. The biggest thing holding me back from Skid Row was my own fear. The own ideas in my mind that these films had placed in me, thinking it was this crazy place with all these crazy people. There weren't gangs coming after me trying to rob me of all my camera equipment. There weren't people hassling me as soon as I entered the city trying to sell me things. There weren't people yelling and screaming at me and throwing things in my face. There were just people who were down on their luck. If you want to know what Skid Row really is, or any place for that matter, don't watch a movie. Don't watch the news. Go there and watch it for yourself. Because if you don't, you'll never learn the truth.